Welcome everybody to Culture Shock Podcast. It's your boy Pat Bayless, and I'm back in the building with somebody very special, somebody that has his own podcast, a guy that I've been watching, paying attention to, and everybody should from New York, period, and on. Avi, how you doing, man?
I'm
How's
good, bro. I'm
everything?
good. How's everything with you, man?
Everything is good. I'm happy to have you here. I really want to talk about it's the 1%
Yeah,
podcast. Break it down to me, just really where you got that name from, and kind of what like inspired you to do podcasting.
sure. First, I want to, I got a cup here. I want to
Hell yeah,
salute
cheers. Come on.
to a therapeutic and a genuine conversation and a
Absolutely.
genuine friendship. So, first to that.
Cheers, bro.
But kind of that really started. So back in college, I went to a university in North Carolina. It was called Pfeiffer University. It was a very small school, and I was going there for basketball. So not many people know, you know, cool. Not many people know that before podcasts and before social media, I played basketball. So that's really, I went there for my first year. It was me and one of my really good friends. He's getting married this year, actually. I'll be going to his wedding soon. Um, I met him, and he was just as motivated in that space as I was at that time. And we would always have this saying. He would always tell me, like, we need to just get 1% better. Like, we need to really become better at the craft, and we need to dedicate ourselves. Just let's do the small steps every day to try to be great and to try to, put ourselves on the map as players, and try to get minutes on the team. And for some reason that just stuck with me, and it was before the whole 1% better got even, it's very mainstream nowadays, but most people know it from social media. But there's a book called The Atomic Habits, which I've read, which is a really good book. It talks about, habit stacking and creating good habits and taking away bad habits. But I never read the book before this saying was even brought up to me.
Mm.
And I think that that's just been a method of my life personally, is that what can I do that's just these tiny little adjustments, or what can I do, what can I focus on each day that's going to create this everlasting impact. And what I found is that we might not see these small things as significant or important. We might not find the going to the gym every day, or reading a book every day for 10 minutes, reading 10 pages, maybe a chapter, or maybe if you're religious, praying or meditating. But these little things that we do every day create that impact of becoming a better person and a more self-aware person. And I think it's in those little details, it's in those little things that you really hone in on, that you look at these crazy successful people and they're doing these things. So why don't I try to focus on these things? Why don't I try to focus on these small minor details? And for me, that's been very hard because, I've never really spoken publicly about this, but at the age of 12, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So for me to focus on those like small minor details, sometimes I miss it, and I still miss it to this day. I'll have Zach hit me up, hey, like this detail wasn't, you forgot to focus on this detail. And sometimes that is an attention to detail that I need to really hone in on. But it's really those small things that to me matter most. And I'm trying to start focusing on those things and really kind of building up a good rapport with myself, of just showing up for myself, whatever that may look like. Small increments every day.
So you saying it happened at 12, right? The diagnosis. So being like a child, what made that be something that you wanted to check on? Was it something like growing up that your family kind of knew or had a feeling, or was it something like you're saying you're missing marks on certain things and they had to check it? How did you figure that out?
So I had really bad anger management when I was like, I really had bad anger problems when I was younger. I would throw fits in stores. Like um, I would never like talk bad or talk back, but I was always, I guess I noticed it within myself and I would express it, and how any little kid would. So I eventually ended up going to therapy at 10 to focus on this anger management. And I guess there was things that in class I would be disruptive, or I would be like the class clown. I would try to be like the personality guy. Like having other people laugh or maybe try to like me. And I think hindsight, looking back, it might have traumatized me a little bit because I don't believe, and I've spoken this about with my mom and my therapist, but I think growing up at like the age of 10, age of 12, I don't think kids should be going to therapy because they're not self-aware, right?
Mm.
Any little kid that is lashing out of anger, I mean, that's just a boy, right? So I think that did a little bit of a hindrance on me. It shedded light positively on self-reflection, but I think negatively, looking back, I would overanalyze myself and I would think too critically about myself. Like, why am I doing this? Or why am I doing that? And it was that like negative voice, sometimes that negative voice that's in my head that's saying either something's wrong with you, you're not good enough, or what is wrong with me? Why am I thinking about these things in a certain light or a certain point of view? Um, and I think for a while that narrative has kind of crept up on me where I even still sometimes to this day, and I'm trying to let go of that, is understanding that nothing's wrong with me, and it's more or less just understanding how to cope and understanding how can I self-regulate myself. Um, so I think for me, it was that I was kind of identified at an early age about this matter and trying to use that to the best of my ability.
Okay, I want to dig a little deep here because I do kind of agree with you because being in therapy for only 3 years that I've been doing it, I can see what you're saying going back, being 10, 12, whatever, in that there's like a whole phase you got to see. Also, but my question to you is because you overanalyze, because you think a lot, right? And you're constantly in your mind, constantly thinking. Have you ever thought about what is it really rooted from, possibly from a little kid? Like, have you ever thought that, like, where from maybe a child, something has happened that has given me anger issues. Now, I'm not saying it has or it hasn't, but something I'm saying, have you ever thought that? Because there's been plenty of things in my life, right? And it for me, it was just teenage years, right? So teenage years, being in high school, all I love was sports. I just like sports, 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 sports. I was enjoying myself. Didn't really see anything like that. But when I got out of high school, like right at the end of high school, is when I started messing around with like women and being in that atmosphere. And the root of me acting silly in my 20s or at least halfway through my 20s and doing all the dumb shit, I do attribute not doing that when I was younger or not. So the root to some of that problem was not getting that gratification when I was in high school and seeing other people get that. And now I'm out of high school and now I got to really show people. And this is all in my head. This has nothing to do with what's really going on. But in my head, I'm like, I got to show such and such I could do this. Yeah, like I'm going to catch this. But it's like the craziest little psycho stuff. But that's why I asked that question because is it really you just were angry for no reason? Or was there stuff that maybe was trauma as an early child?
I think that seeing a dysfunctional, no, I don't want to say dysfunctional because I don't think it was, I think more people have experienced dysfunction than I have, but I think a sort of dysregulated family. I think that's a good place to start. I think seeing what I observed growing up where both parents would be arguing, not all the time, but there would be arguments, there would be isolation, there would be avoidance. I think a lot of those things kind of crept up a little bit, but I think unconsciously you're not aware of that at 10, 12 years old. And avoidance of love for my father, avoidance of not having the uncomfortable conversations. I think what I viewed growing up wasn't the best relationship model, and I think that showed up in my personal relationships. I think that though what I've witnessed and observed, I think are still with me to this day that I'm trying to work on and overcome. And I've definitely gotten better in every relationship that I've been in. But I can see where, okay, this makes sense. I was avoidant and I didn't want to have this uncomfortable conversation. So that on the back end, that created a more dysfunction because I never realized how important the uncomfortable conversations are and bringing truth up or bringing your perspective up or something that's bothering you, you want to talk about. And I think that if I potentially had a better relationship model growing up, I think that some of those relationships that I've been in wouldn't have gone the way that they did. Obviously, life has its course, and things happen sometimes the way that they're supposed to, and sometimes it's for your benefit, sometimes it's for your detriment. And I think for me to really understand all of that, I guess part of me now thinks that I didn't have the validation that I maybe needed as a kid. I think that I still seek sometimes validation. And I think I ask my friends a lot, like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because I think unknowingly and unbeknownst to me that I'm not secure within myself and my decision making because of that. Um, and obviously that has to do with confidence. A lot of that has to do with growing up, and a lot of that has to do with healing those certain like attachments within myself. But I think a lot of that plays to trusting myself more. So I think that there's a lot of things that probably could have led to that anger, but I think probably the relationship model that I witnessed, and some of those small things that I witnessed growing up.
The dysfunction in the relationship with your family, right? Did you see that pour right away when it came to relationships? This is a two-part question though. Did you see it pour into like relationships with women, and also did some of that lead you to seek the wrong crowd?
Hmm. I think those are good questions. I think the first one is, well, let me answer the second one first, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
get to the first one. I think the second one, I don't think so. I think I had a pretty good character judgment. I think that I had good friends around me. Obviously, growing up, there was a little bit of people that I was hanging around with. Was like, I think I was exploring kind of like where do I end up in terms of like the people that I'm friends with, and for a while, I don't think it was the wrong crowd. I think we were just being boys, like we were just doing things we were just being reckless, as any boy probably would be.
Absolutely.
So I don't think it ended up in the wrong crowd. I think I found my way and understood what my values and what my ethics were. So I went out and seek that people that were kind of on the same wavelength. So in that regard, I don't think so. Now, could you the first question again? I'm sorry.
So the first question was, did you, because of the relationship that you were around growing up within the family, did it pour into relationships that you got in with women?
Mm.
Like any of the maybe bad habits or traits that you sought was bad and not was something you wanted to be. Did you ever look back and be like, I'm being exactly like what I didn't want to
Yeah,
be?
yeah. That I do believe so. I think I was on both sides of the spectrum, like mother and father. I think in terms of like what I probably gained or didn't gain, but what I've adopted from my father was more of the avoidance, more of the I don't feel like having this uncomfortable conversation, knowing that I probably should, right, and knowing that it's really heavy on my heart. I probably should say something, but I don't. And what I'm realizing now about myself is that I don't like conflict. So there has been a certain point in my relationships where I feel like there's an expiration date, right? And there's been like unconsciously to me, I know when that date's coming, or not like the date itself, but like the time frame of the relationship. I never really had a long term relationship, so for me personally, there's an unconscious fear that comes that once this date point comes, there it goes.
Mm,
And there's my abandonment issues,
right.
right? Seeking, creeping up. Oh, like there's this voice. It's about to be time. The end of the relationship is about to come, and that's where more of my anxious comes from, and I feel less secure and a little bit more insecure during that. Um, and then I think I avoid the sometimes the tough conversations that I probably need to have, or the truth, or really saying what I actually feel, because I don't want to step on somebody else's toes.
Have you allowed, and this is probably gonna be humbling to probably answer, but have you allowed women to walk all over you because you've been avoidant of having those type of conversations? You know what I'm saying? Because there's people in relationships that feel a certain way, but they're so nervous to have that conversation with their girl, or they're so nervous to have that conversation with their guy that they just don't do it. And now they're just allowing this. In my opinion, it's a slap in the face if they don't agree with it and they're not willing to put up with it. They're just constantly getting slapped in the face. So have you ever found yourself there where you're like, I don't wanna really talk about this, so I'm just kind of gonna let her rock?
Yeah, absolutely. And that showed up honestly, ironically, more in women than it has in men because my mom is somebody that's very important to me. And I don't have a problem like saying how I feel to one of my friends, one of my boys, or to a friend that's, a male figure. Like I don't have that problem. But it shows up more when the female
Right.
dynamic is involved because maybe there's part of me that's like I don't want to say I see my mother in them, but a part of me is like that feminine figure is so fragile to me that it's hard for me to really say what I want or say how I feel. And that's something for me personally that I've tried to build barriers up with, or not barriers. I want to say boundaries with my mom. I think that's been something that I've kind of tried to do with her first because I think that could translate into other areas, right? Like other people, other females that I may meet. So definitely think that in relationships, platonic or romantic, I've definitely been a little bit more walked on than I like to admit. And some of it I'm still working through because I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I find the safety or the comfort in pleasing other people. And I'm okay if I don't get pleased in the end because at the same time, like, I'd rather give than really get. I'd rather give to you than I'd rather give to myself. And that's kind of like a disrespect to myself because why would I give more to another person than me, right? Like, I think that you should be giving of other people, but at the same time, at the detriment to myself, I don't think that should happen. So I think in that regard, yes, I do believe that I was a little bit walked on and maybe taken for granted later that I was this giving person. And in the end, I didn't really receive the same love or the same effort or appreciation that I gave to other people.
Yeah, I think I'm the same thing as you where it comes to people pleasing. It's a great thing when you want to do nice things for people. It's an amazing thing. But that's the point is when people are willing to walk all over you and they know your weakness and they know sometimes people pleasing can be a weakness, you wind up doing a lot for somebody. And the amount that you're doing for somebody sometimes isn't matched. And I'm not a person that if I buy you flowers, I need something in return. If I do something, I need something in return. But there is a level of respect that comes with it. If I'm pleasing you in any regard, there's a level of respect that has to come back. Everybody has different love languages, right? So their love language may be that, maybe like going places and doing things and stuff. But maybe my love language is words of affirmation, a simple thank you. Some people lack that. And I think in a world right now, there's more judgment than there is gratitude, right? If somebody puts somebody, just for example, we see on social media, somebody goes on vacation and their man next to them isn't doing the same thing, they're in judgment rather than the gratitude of maybe he signed a car note for you so you can get a car. But because we're not on vacation or we're not in Dubai or we're not on the quad or we're not doing something like that, there's a judgment instead of the gratitude. And I find that a lot in people that people please, they sometimes get the shitty end of the stick. Do you feel like, I feel like from our conversation, you judge yourself a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you ever get to enjoy life because of how much judgment you're putting upon yourself? Not even from others, just the judgment of not, when I say, and when I'm trying to explain this in the right way, your podcast, right? Attention to detail, all of those little things, you're in judgment. If you don't do something right, I'm sure you kick yourself probably. So do you really get to enjoy the fruit of what you're putting out? Because what you're doing is amazing, but do you ever sit back and just really get to enjoy that?
I truthfully speaking, I don't think I ever probably have. And I speak about this like with Zach a lot, and ironically, I put that saying or I put that narrative on other people, but I fail to do that for myself. Um, and I always try to play the devil's advocate, like you're doing a lot, like you're. It's just to the people from my point of view, right? It's I tell them, hey, like look at what you're doing, but then myself, I don't really look at it, right? Um, I don't think I think I've enjoyed so far in my life, but my life's always been a grind, right? Like even, I could date far as when I was playing basketball. Like it was always proving people wrong and, people that were in the high school crowd saying I wouldn't play college basketball and why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough, you're too slow, like all of this stuff. I was always trying to prove people wrong, so I was always in the gym. And what ended up happening was that I was playing college basketball. I played for a year, but I still got to that. I still got to that feat. And now it's different because it's the same thing, but it's just a different medium. It's a different form. So now there's a little bit more pressure because I'm doing it on myself. But I don't think I've enjoyed, the growth that I've had even on social media or even the impact that I've made on other people's lives. Like I don't think I've enjoyed that because there's always something next for me, right? Like when you're not fortunate to have a team and you're showing up to the studio by yourself with all the equipment and the people that are asking you, it's just you and there's nobody else to help you or whatever it is. I think for a while you kind of get a little bit like self-sufficient in that way. And I think that I'm so focused on the product sometimes that I don't really see the mosaic or I don't see the picture that's being painted. Um, so I think, yeah, I'm really critical on myself. I think I judge myself a lot, and I think I don't give myself nearly the flowers that I probably should. Doing as much as I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years, like I don't think I've probably given myself grace once. You know, I try to, but then there's a form of me that's like, well, you're still not where you want to be, so you can't really be giving yourself that much flowers. So I think I do judge myself, and I think I don't give myself enough credit because I, do everything myself. I, edit, I reach out to guests, I do all this myself, and I think that there's sometimes so much people that I find that are more ahead of me in the game that I'm like, damn, why am I not there yet? Um, so I think that judgment probably stems from, back in high school when I was trying to play college basketball and just proving people wrong. So I think I judge myself a lot because I really want to be successful and I want to do the things that I want to do, right? Like I want to be a full-time podcaster, but I don't have the profile to be sponsored yet.
Right.
I don't have all these things. So yeah, I do think I judge myself a lot, and I think, with anything, I need to give myself a little bit more grace, and I don't, and I probably should because I do work a lot, and that's probably part of loving myself. Maybe I don't love myself as much as I probably should.
Well, we're a part of giving flowers, so me just to you, I've seen like the body of work. I did obviously whenever I have a guest, I do research. So I've seen like your body of work. You obviously put the time in, and obviously the way you describe it, I already know. Like from the jump when I first started, same thing is, what am I gonna do? How do I start? Where do I go? And I've been blessed. Like people like Zach and other people came along the line that have really helped me. But it's hard when you got to put together episodes and you got to put together all this stuff. It's not an easy thing. So I understand. Also, judgment. So same way like you, it wasn't in the same. I need to go play college basketball, but for me it was, I have to show up all the time. Like I have to. Um, I was always short. I was always this. I was always that. I have to show up. I have to prove people wrong. But it gets to a point where it becomes exhausting. And I think that's where I've kind of reached now that I've hit the 30 mark, and it became so exhausting trying to prove people wrong, trying to show people this, trying to, oh, my name is like this. Nah, that's not who I am. You know what I'm saying? It comes to a point where it's like, if you want to talk, okay, but here's my body of work. So that's what I'm saying to you is, you could say you don't have the profile to be a full-time podcaster, but your body of work is starting to show that you can be. You get what I'm saying? So me to you, I feel like you deserve your flowers. I always would say, even if it's a day out of the week, take that time and really just say, yo, this is what I'm doing. Like, yeah, it's a little frustrating. I may not be where I'm at, and I don't know if you believe in God or not, but it's just like, all right, what's your plan? Like, let me just relax and realize that this is your plan. But if you're putting in the work, you got to be okay with the results.
Yeah.
There's so many people in this world that we see that maybe our family members, our friends that are feeling the same way we're feeling. This is not enough. I need more. I need more. And they may have just accomplished something that you personally would be like, I wish I was there. Why are you not happy? You know what I'm saying? And it's just people are never really satisfied and never really just grateful for the opportunities that God has presented them. You know what I'm saying? And for you, I just feel like your body of work and where you're going, sky's the limit. You know what I'm saying? So continue to just be great with what you're doing. I want to talk about meditation. We talk a lot about therapy on this podcast, but meditating we really don't talk about. When did you start meditating, and really describe to people what meditation truly is?
First, I want to say I appreciate those words and those affirmations. Thank you. I received those.
Sure.
And secondly, I think so. Meditation for me has been something that has kind of ebbed and flowed. Like I would say in 2021 or 2000, like the pandemic. Some people really didn't like the pandemic because of they had to be with themselves. But for me personally, I really found solace and enjoyment in, not maybe the world was crazy at the time, but I think within myself, I found the most peace. And maybe it's because the area that I lived in Westchester County, where I was able to go to Hudson River and just sit by the beach and just chill. And just, I would often have my shoes and socks off and I'm grounding myself. And I'm walking, across, or I'm reading a book, or I'm sitting there just watching the waves go by. So I found meditation during that time because during that time I was going through a breakup, and it was probably like not the worst, but I think it was a really bad time during my life, right? Like it was one of the worst times of my life. And I'm like 20, 21 years old. Might have been just turning 20 at the time. And I needed a way to calm my environment, calm my mind. So, I watch people meditate. I watch a creator talk about meditation and the benefits of meditation. And I was like, let me try it, right? And, during that time, I would sit 10, 15 minutes a day, just sit in meditation. And as time went on, I noticed that I was a lot sharper. I had a lot more clarity. I was able to speak more effectively. I was able to cultivate an understanding within myself that maybe not many people were able to relate to. But more or less, I felt like I was closer to myself. And I think that for me during that time, that's exactly what I needed. And once I found it, I was, as I've gone older, and I'm not the best with it now, right? Like, I think the change of environment that I'm in, living in Brooklyn, it's kind of like, it's very hard to focus, like, on your breath or the present moment. So that the environment's definitely affecting me a little bit now, more so than the previous years. But I would say that I found a point in my life, or I found a spot where there's simply just no judgment. There's nothing there, right? Like it's people, focus on their breath, they focus on their thoughts. Like even just sitting here is kind of like a meditation because you're just sitting here pondering on conversation, right? Like you're being philosophical, you're sitting with yourself, analyzing yourself from a non-objective point of view where you're not judging yourself. So it's just the littlest things that you can find in meditation that people think that it's, oh, we just need to be focusing on our breath and we need to be sitting in a certain position and we need to be, but meditation is all around us, right? Like you could be sitting waiting for the train and that's meditation. You're just sitting there observing your thoughts.
That's an interesting outlook. I don't even mean to cut you off. That's just such an interesting outlook because when I think of meditation, and I don't know if I'm speaking for a lot of people when they watch this, but when I think of meditation, I think of like just sitting in a quiet ass place, eyes closed. I can't say in Indian style. I'm too old to do that. But just sitting down and just in the dark, like just in the dark and just quiet. That's what I think of when I think of meditation. But the way you describe it is just so much more open.
Yeah.
Which I love. I'm sorry to cut you off. Keep going.
No. But I mean, that's like the misconception, right? Like we think that, meditation is just this whole concept, right? And even from people that are more experienced to me, like one of my good friends, Blake Gus, he's been, he's on my podcast as well. Like, he's been a great influence on me in terms of like, okay, you're gonna sit here, you're gonna observe your thoughts, and you're gonna look into your past, your present moment, and you're just gonna throw it away, right? Like, you're gonna be above the universe. You're gonna imagine yourself above the universe, and you're just gonna start whatever those thoughts are. You're just gonna throw them into the sun. And when you do that, it's not like you're throwing those memories away, but you're throwing the associations and the connotations of those memories and throwing them into the sun, that they no longer have an effect on you. Those emotions, the state of being that you were at the time, like those have no effect on you currently here. They're not here. They're not present anymore. So there's different forms of meditation. I think really stillness is the meditation itself, right? Like driving, and no music, and you're just sitting there just driving, your mind just goes to a different place. Like, that's meditation. You're observing your thoughts. What are your thoughts telling you? So I think that for me it's done wonders, and maybe like I need to tap back into what that was, because there's just always like that previous version that I alluded to is like I think that was the most calmest version I've ever been. Like, that was the most stoic version I've ever been. I wasn't giving in to any desires. I wasn't giving into any, I didn't have any really needs at the time, but like any human desire that I had, I wasn't giving into.
Wow.
And I just found myself a lot more peaceful. And like I said, I think that probably has to do with a little bit of my environment, but meditation for anybody, I would always say full send.
Dealing with meditation and life, just in general, what do you think has been a sticking point? Because like, so what you were saying was your desires, right? You had like no desire for anything, no nothing. But growing up as a child to now, what has meditation not been able to correct? What has other things you tried not being able to correct up to now? Like right now, how old are you right now?
25.
25. So from childhood to 25, what's something that just one big thing that sticks out to you that you like, I need to fix that?
That's a good one.
Could it be a relationship with anybody?
I think the relationship with myself. I think the relationship with myself. That's a good fucking question. Fuck.
If you want to think about it, we can come back to it. I got more for you. I got plenty more.
I think probably like the relationship with myself, for sure. I think, kind of how we alluded to earlier, like the judgment of myself. I think that I tend to see everybody else and how great they're doing in life. And then I don't, for whatever reason, like it kind of boils into that point where like the relationship to myself and the perception of myself, right? Like for me and the podcast being called the 1% podcast, I often allude myself to being Mr. 1%. But I know I'm not Mr. 1% because I know I'm not making close to what the 1% would look like financially. Like, I know that I'm not where I need to be in terms of where I want to go with the podcast or where I want to go as a person. I'm not Mr. 1%. But I guess maybe in that way also myself, like, I'm reframing or like affirming to myself that I'm going to get there. And I think that the relationship with myself has been very much of like an iffy thing where I just don't think I give myself enough love. Like, I just don't think that I give that love that I probably should give to others to myself. Like, I think I really believe in others, but then deep down, like, I don't believe in myself. So it's like whatever I give to other people, I'm not giving that to myself for whatever reason. Like, I'm giving this person, whoever it is, I'm giving them love, I'm giving them encouragement, I'm giving them motivation and inspiration. But then when it comes to myself, it's like this weird thing where it's somehow negative.
Do you feel like it's a blockage? Do you feel like there's like this? Because like with me, I feel like that sometimes. I just feel like there's a block. Yeah. Like in my brain, I just feel like there's a block sometimes where like I'm almost scared to take that next step. Like I'm motivated to motivate everybody to chase their dreams. I'm motivated to tell you gonna reach, or Zach, he's gonna reach his limit. But then I'm like at a block sometimes. Like, where the fuck do I go?
Yeah.
What do I motivate? How do I motivate myself?
I think maybe there might be a blockage, but then like for whatever reason, I find inspiration in the negative. So like that negative talk that I was alluding to, I find inspiration and motivation in that. Like I'm not where I want to be. I'm not like in the shape that I want to be in. Okay, well, I often when I'm lifting or whatever, I'm in the gym, like a lot of negative thoughts are running around, like you don't look great or like all these things. So it's like blinded by insecurity, right? And it's I'm insecure about certain things, but I'm also motivated by that insecurity or inspired by that insecurity for whatever reason. But then people think that I'm this like really positive person, but then once they get to know me and they hear sometimes the negative thoughts I might say or the negative perception of myself, like, oh, maybe he's not that positive. So I guess, but in a way, I feel like I need that. There's this one like Logic song where he talks about how um, he's motivated by his insecurities or inspired by his insecurities, and he feels like sometimes he needs those. And for whatever reason, I feel like I need that negative voice. I need that person that's going to tell me like you're not good enough, you're not all this, because it motivates me to get to a higher place. So maybe that blockage is like probably more acceptance within myself, more love within myself, but there's this weird dichotomy where it's or a contradiction where I need more love, but then like I also need that negative
Right.
voice. So it's like this weird thing that I'm trying to understand and trying to balance and try to accept. But I think the relationship with myself has been the most iffy battle that I probably have fought.
I could kind of see that. So it's weird. It's one of those things, like you said, where you're kind of saying the negative things, and then I don't know if you feed into what people say about you, or maybe like a narrative that used to be something about you, because we're forever evolving and trying to get better. And I think sometimes when we meet people, we associate them as being this person. Like there's been people I've been around years ago, and I see them again, and what I associate them with is what I was around with them then. I think a lot of people, for me now, whenever they see me, they associate the Pat in his 20s compared to the Pat is now. And then when they talk to me, they're like, wow, you changed a lot. Like, you're a lot different. Like, couple of, and the one thing about this podcast, which I love in podcasts in general, is I'm finally to a point where I could just tell my truth and be transparent. I don't care. One of the biggest things, like, when I was younger, was just shooting my shot. You think Steph Curry take a lot of shots. I was in DM shooting. So, taking a lot of shots, being in quote unquote everybody's DMs, people seeing that as like, oh, he's just da 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 da, right? Now it's more of like, yeah, I still talk to people, but I'm very like selective. Even if I like this person, I'm like, do I really want to indulge? Some of the people that are from the past will just automatically assume if they see me out with somebody, oh, he must be doing this X, Y, Z, right? Because that's the perception maybe I gave them and that they have now. Do you ever feel any perception of yourself from the past? Like does anybody hold you to a standard from the past that you are not now?
Yeah.
And it could be even family.
Yeah, I think I won't like drop the names, but I definitely do. I definitely feel like I definitely feel like that perception of who I was it's hard to accept who I am now. I was blessed with people that understand me. Maybe not to the fullest extent, but like I think at first, obviously from where I was in terms of basketball, like it was a new transition. And the content creation and podcasting didn't come till later, but I would say like social media itself, like they've always known I was a motivated person and always inspired person, and I would be able to give advice to other people. Right. But I think there was a little bit of a grace period.
It's recording. Okay, keep going.
And there was a little bit of a grace period in terms of like that transition. But for the most part now, the people that are around me, and I think it's the biggest flex to be friends with people that you have from high school. And I still have those friends, right? Like I still have all those friends from high school. Been friends with them, for close to 10 years now. And they have been a huge cement to my success because I've always been able to be myself around them, whatever that may be. Obviously, there's a different version on camera, off camera, but like it's the same person simultaneously. So I would say that I've been blessed in that sense where I've had the people around me, and obviously the people that I've attracted along my journey, like Zach, like Jake, John, all these people that I've attracted into my life in result of what I'm doing, they've always accepted me for who I was. So there was never this like, oh, I had to make new friends or stuff like that. Um, and I think for me, like the biggest thing was I think my mom was the most accepting person of all of my evolutions. Now to this day, like her and I would have a heart to heart conversation about whatever life it may be, or I'm asking her questions, she's asking me questions, and we're talking about life. Um, and I'm blessed in that sense because not many people would be able to have parents not many people would be able to have parents or a parent that is accepting of who they are or is appreciative of who they are. I think for me, I'm blessed in that sense. So I probably wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for the people around me and in terms of their acceptance of me and in terms of um, the way that they motivated me and inspired me to continue to grow. So I never really dealt with that problem in terms of like people around me like influencing me or um, in terms of worrying about outside influences because I'm still friends and still boys with the people that I've been growing up with.
All right. Give me two breakdowns, two different perspectives.
Mhm.
Give me your relationship because you brought up your mom just now. Give me your relationship with your mom, and then give me your relationship with your father.
The relationship with my mom is I think the relationship with my mom is the most unconditional love that I probably have ever experienced. Um, because no matter the conditions, no matter if I have $100 to my name, no matter if I'm doing something with my life or not, my mom has always been in my life and always been in my corner and believed in me when I like I said alluded to before that I wanted to play college basketball and nobody believed in me. She was the person that believed in me. I was crying in the car because I wasn't getting playing time from varsity or JV, and she was there like believing me, continue to keep going. Um, and just most recently about something that I brought up to her that I wanted to do, and she was accepting of it, right? And she loves me a different way than my father does. Um, she's my public relations, like she's my PR. She's posting on Facebook about the things that I'm doing. Like she's invested in my life, and sometimes to like maybe a little bit helicopterish, But that's who she is, and I've accepted that and who she is. Um, and I love that about her. And she understands me in terms of like I might not talk to her every day, or there might be some days where I need a couple days to stop speaking to her. But she's loved me unconditionally in terms of everything that I am. So the relationship with my father is very different because what I've noticed about as I've gotten older, I definitely like to some degree despised um, my father in some ways because I thought that the love that he was giving me what it wasn't love, right? But then as I've gotten older and matured, I've realized that he just shows me love differently. He shows me love and get home safe, or make sure you're safe out there. Like make sure you're taking care of these things, or um, it's been a while. I haven't heard from you. Like, you know, it's the little subtle things, right? That's not the I miss you or the I love you, right? Like he just shows love in different ways, and I had to take a step back in terms of like my ego and all of that and strip all that away and understand that he just shows love differently. And it wasn't I think it was like a month ago now where I had a conversation with him and I asked him truthfully, I said, do you think that you could have done the best that you could have as a father?
Right.
And I've never really heard him cry like that before. And what he told me is like, I finally asked him that question. I've been wanting to ask him that question for like a couple years now. and asking him like, did I feel like you could have been? I told him from my perspective, I feel like you could have showed up a little bit more. But he said, I did the best that I could, right? And I didn't. I obviously known that my grandparents were here when I was alive. I never met any of my grandparents, but he told me the fact that my parents weren't alive when you were born. So all of this parenting stuff, I didn't know how to do, right? Like I couldn't call up my mom, I couldn't call up my dad and say, "Hey, like, am I doing this thing right? Like, am I doing this thing right? Should I be parenting them a certain way? Should I be disciplining them in a certain way?" And once I heard him break down like that and cry, I mean, I went to tears because it's as men sometimes we're not vulnerable about our shortcomings or being accountable about certain things. And he was accountable in that way. Like I could have done better for sure, but I didn't. But here's why I wasn't. And that's not to excuse the behavior, but more or less giving you an understanding and a perspective like, this is why I didn't show up because I didn't know how to. And to me, that was one of the most like, I think I needed to hear that for a long time because I thought that he didn't love me in the way that I needed him to, or he didn't love me at all. But he just didn't know how to, right? Like being a parent, you don't really know how to be a parent, right? You're figuring it out along the way. There's no dictionary, there's no manual book. You're just kind of figuring it out. So when he told me that, I think for me, that was an understanding and a confirmation that he does love me, but he just doesn't know how to. And I can meet him where he's at, right? Because I feel like sometimes we meet people, or we can only meet people at a certain understanding that they met themselves. So that's where he's at. So I have to meet him in that way. And if he and it's it's not a disrespect to me, but I'm meeting him where he's at. That's my father. Like I only get one of those.
Yep.
So I have to understand where he's at. And if that's where he's at, then that's where I got to meet him at. But I'm not going to disrespect him or none of that because he's my father. Like I said, I only got one. So the dichotomy and the relationship between me and my two parents is very different. I'll talk to my dad maybe once every week, once every 2 weeks. I'll talk to my mom like 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
But they don't love me any different.
Right.
They still love me the same, and I still love them the same. But it's the frequency or the differences in their love that, for me, I've had to grow accustomed to.
That's such an interesting take. Mothers and fathers that watch this pod, they will absolutely. So many people can relate to that. Cause man, I mean, I was blessed to be close with both my parents. But there's so many people that are in that same predicament. Man, that's a lot. You unpacked a lot, and I appreciate you for being vulnerable. Last thing before we get out of here, what does the word culture mean to you?
Ooh. From my understanding of understanding cultural psychology and kind of having a brief understanding what culture means, I would think that culture to me means people around you are like-minded individuals that share the same characteristics as you or share the same mindset as you. Culture to me, I guess, looking at it, it's very important to me because I look for people that they don't have to have the same ambitions as I do. Like some of the friends that I have don't want to create the biggest podcast in the world. Some of them don't. Some of them want to do what they want to do. But I think it's the same understanding of life and the same understanding of mental or mindset that they need to become better in their life. So culture to me is something that being around people or associating yourself with people that might want the same things as you or to the same degree. And I think in that we can find community. I think that in finding the same people that we want to be like or aspire to be like, we can find our tribe or the people that we are destined to be with at the end of this life. So I guess, ironically, creating the 1% podcast and creating and promoting this lifestyle, becoming 1% better, that it's an understanding of people that want to become better in their life, whatever that may be. If you want to be, a billionaire, you want to be a real estate agent, you want to be a podcast, you want to be a content creator. becoming that better version of self. So that's what I would say culture means to me, is being around individuals that want the same things as you, or share the same characteristics or ethics that you do, to a certain extent.
Bro, I ain't gonna lie, that was perfect. That was perfectly said. That's probably one of the best answers I've heard since asking people that since day one. That was beautifully put. I just want to, before we get out here, just give you your flowers, bro. Again, what you're doing, the work you're doing, even the words you said today is gonna help so many people, bro. So continue to bless people, continue to bless yourself, and just keep praying on it, bro. Because obviously you have the tools. The way you speak, the way you present yourself, the way your life has gone, it's all been for a purpose. And man, that 1%, it's gonna stick in my head, man. I ain't gonna lie, it's a perfect title, name, everything, man. So I just really appreciate you being here, being vulnerable, taking your time. You know what I'm saying? It's very appreciated, bro.
Of course.
Uh, one more thing I wanted to ask you though before we get out, because I always want people to show love. Where can they find your podcast? What's your Instagram page? Everything like that.
Of course. I also want to give you your love, asking some really great questions, something that I've been thinking about, but haven't been able to present to the world, or haven't been able to present to myself, more importantly. So I want to thank you for that, and the same things with you. I understand how hard it can be as a small podcaster, a podcaster that's trying to make it. So I want to give you your flowers as well. To the people that want to, find out more about the podcast, you can search up the 1% podcast. No number, it's THE, the number, or the word one, and then percent podcast. And if you want to follow me, it's Avi Wiswer, and you'll be able to find me there.
Man, I appreciate you for being here again. Make sure y'all check him out. Check out his episode. You got some dope guests. Special one. What is it? Tomorrow it comes out, right?
There was one that just came out just today.
Today?
Yeah.
Oh, so man, make sure y'all go check it out. Run up the likes, run up the subscribes. And with that being said, this Culture Shock Podcast, we're out of here. Thank you, my brother.
Appreciate you.